So good morning, students. Let's proceed with what we had done in the last class. Let's quickly recap what we have already done till now, and then we'll proceed. So we have seen what is an optical fiber, how it works, how the light will propagate inside the fiber through the Snell's law, and then the total internal reflection. We've seen what are the conditions for light to remain inside the core of the fiber. That is when the incident angle is less than the acceptance angle. If it exceeds the acceptance angle, then some part of the light will escape inside the cladding, and hence there's going to be loss in data. So we've seen that condition, and then we discussed the types of the fibers. These types could be in the form of refractive index profile, or it could be based on the mode. So based on a refractive index, we could have step index or graded index. So we've discussed what a step index is. In a step index, there will be abrupt change in the refractive index once you move from the cladding to the core. Whereas in the graded index, there'll be a gradual increase and a gradual decrease once you move from the cladding to the core. The other manner in which we can differentiate between types of fibers, is based on what is known as mode. And in mode, uh, the mode basically is a set of electromagnetic fields, and if they are orthogonal to each other, then we call them as transverse electromagnetic or linearly polarized modes. So based on this, we have the single mode fiber and the multi-mode fiber. So a single mode fiber is going to support only one mode, as the name suggests, but it can be used for longer distances. Whereas the multi-mode fiber will be used, will have multiple modes, and it can be used only for shorter distance. There is a major disadvantage of multi-mode fiber. It is known as intermodal dispersion. That we'll be discussing in module 2. Then we went on to solve some numericals based on different aspects which we have discussed, like critical angle, numerical aperture, which is the light gathering capacity of the fiber, index difference, delta, and various other factors. Uh, in the last lecture, we were discussing about single mode fiber, and we discussed that the the condition for a single mode fiber is that the V number V should be less than or equal to 2.405. Right, this has been found experimentally, so we are just going to follow that, and based on this we have solved many numericals, like if it is a single mode operation, calculate the wavelength of operation. If there's some change in the parameter like delta, what happens to the wavelength of operation, so on and so forth. So we solved multiple numericals also based on calculating number of modes if the fiber is a graded index fiber, right? So in today's lecture, let us just recap uh, a few parameters of single mode fiber, and then we'll then solve certain other numericals. Okay. So when it comes to the single mode fiber, uh, so let me put the heading as a single mode fiber. We had discussed that the cutoff condition, the cutoff the cutoff condition was n2k less than equal to beta less than equal to n1k, where this is the propagation constant. Okay, so this propagation constant basically is the measure of the change which the amplitude of a wave undergoes as the wave propagates. Okay, so in simple terms, the amplitude of any wave, uh, or signal, if you take an individual signal, it's not going to remain constant. It is going to keep varying, right? And that change can be measured using the propagation constant, right? So in general, we can define what is known as a gamma, which is the amplitude of light at the source. That is, let's say if we are using an LED, then what is the amplitude at that point when we are transmitting, and the divided by the amplitude of light at some distance x, right? So this x is some distance at which I want to see what will be the amplitude of the light. Now, in ideal condition, I would want this gamma to be 1. That means the amplitude at the source and the amplitude after a distance is the same. But that is obviously not going to happen. And in general, because the OFC, the optical fiber cable, is non-linear in nature, or it is a non-linear channel, we will see in module 2 that as the light propagates inside the fiber. So if I make the fiber like this, and as the light will propagate from the source inside the fiber towards the receiver, we'll see that because of certain properties inside the fiber, there is going to be an exponential decay or decrease. Exponential decay or decrease in the amplitude. And this is going to be mathematically written as some e raised to let's say mu x, and that will be a naught divided by ax, where a naught is the amplitude at the source, a will be the amplitude at the distance, whichever distance you're measuring. That's why it is being multiplied with x, right? And this is the I should actually write this as gamma, right? And this propagation constant gamma is alpha plus I beta. Okay, with this again we are going to see in module 2 in detail, where alpha is the attenuation constant and this beta here is a phase constant. So to give you more insight into this, the attenuation constant is going to affects the power. Why? Because more attenuation will imply that the amplitude is going to decrease. Therefore, you are going to be required to use an amplifier to amplify your signal. This phase constant beta we'll see is directly affecting the dispersion. So what is meant by dispersion? Very quickly, if you have a bit between 0 to t, right, with distance, if I travel some distance x, the bit is going to start to elongate, right? And this is your 0 and this is your t. Now as the bit elongates, it is going to affect the bits per second, the time over which I can send the bit. So now with this elongated bit, you need more time. So in effect, the dispersion affects the bandwidth, right? And all communication systems, be it optical, wireless, satellite, doesn't matter, are only based on two basic factors. One is power, the other is bandwidth. So you want to reduce the power so that the cost will reduce, and you want to increase the bandwidth so that your customers are going to be happy, right? So we'll see more details of this gamma equal to alpha plus beta. In fact, we are going to see a lot of detail about this alpha, a lot of numericals based on this, and then a lot of numericals based on this beta as well, and what kind of dispersion occurs, because there is certain kind of dispersion in multimode fiber, and then there is a certain kind of dispersion in the single mode fibers. Okay. So in module 1, we only introduce these factors, but in module 2, we pick up each and every factor, that is alpha and then beta, and then analyze them in detail. Okay, so these are certain parameters of the optical fiber, and we'll be obviously concentrating more on the single mode fiber because that is the one which is used for longer distances, right? The other parameter of interest that we have in regard to single mode fiber is known as the mode field diameter, in short MFD, right? So it basically describes the signal transmission properties for multimode fiber, right? The earlier part which we had done, gamma equal to alpha plus I beta, is used mostly for single mode fibers. This mode field diameter uh, is used for signal transmission properties, of multimode fibers. Uh, it is determined from what is known as a mode field distribution, determined by mode field distribution. And the third point regarding this MFD is it is a function of optical source wavelength, comma core radius, that is core radius of the fiber, and refractive index profile, right? So it is dependent on, or it is a function of optical source wavelength. Means we will see in module 3 that LEDs can operate most efficiently at a certain wavelength. Lasers can operate efficiently at only certain wavelengths. So that is known as the optical source wavelength. That is the wavelength at which you get the highest or the maximum efficiency from an optical source. The core radius is of the fiber, and the RI profile is also of the fiber, right? So since the mode field diameter is related more to the multimode fiber, we don't look into much detail of it, because we are not looking really into the multimode fibers, because they are used only for shorter distances. However, we still can know a little bit more about this mode field diameter. Of course, there are not going to be any numericals based on this. Okay. So mode field diameter is based on the distribution as was specified, and it looks something like this. It is spread over wavelength, and the highest or the peak here, which we find here, the peak which we find here, we call it as some E naught. Of course, y-axis is going to be the amplitude. So E naught is the maximum amplitude that you get at this point. Uh, and this is the core radius, and this entire distribution here is the mode field diameter. So you can see what is important to note here is that there is some part of this mode field diameter, the one that I'm shading here, is outside the core of the fiber, right? So the mode field diameter really gives us the spread of the light not only inside the core of the fiber but also outside the core of the fiber, right? So why do we need this mode field diameter? Why are we even discussing about this mode field diameter? So we'll see again in module 2 when we talk a little bit about multimode fiber that mode field diameter predicts, or it helps us in knowing what is known as a splice loss. Splicing is a technique by which we can join different fibers. So you're never going to get a fiber which is 3000 kilometers long, right? You'll get a fiber which is 1 or 2 kilometers long. So to transmit 3 to 5000 kilometers, you're going to have to join these fibers. That process is known as splicing. We would want this splicing to be ideal in nature, but it is not going to be possible. There's going to be loss as we splice the fiber. So that is going to be predicted by the mode field diameter. It is also going to predict for us what is known as a bending loss. We are not going to be able to put the fiber or deploy the fiber just as a straight line, because as you can just imagine in our city Belgaum itself, if you want to put fiber, it's not going to be a straight road. There's going to be a lot of curves all over the place. So therefore, there's going to be bending of the fiber, and each and every time we bend a fiber, there's going to be loss there. Right? We'll be discussing this point again in module 2. Bending also leads to attenuation. Right? The mode field diameter also helps us to find the cutoff wavelength. This aspect we have already done, lambda c, how to calculate this, and it also helps us in evaluating or predicting one type of dispersion known as waveguide dispersion. This again we are going to discuss in detail in module 2 when we talk about dispersion. The dispersion can also be of different types. One is known as material dispersion and the other is known as waveguide dispersion. So this mode field diameter will help us in predicting what is known as the waveguide dispersion. Okay. So right now this is just an introduction to the dispersion part. We'll be doing the detail more in module 2, right? So just to give you the mathematical glimpse of mode field diameter, because like I said, there's not going to be any numerical, but usually in the question paper, there's a short note for about 4 to 5 marks, right? What is MFD? And then the detail of MFD, right? So mathematically, it is defined as some 2W0. And so we are not going to do the derivation of this equation. So you have twice an integral from some 0 to t naught e square r cube dr, and divided by and in this equation E of r, it is a field which is Gaussian in nature, as you can see from the graph. So it is like a Gaussian PDF. And here E of r, since it is Gaussian, is given as this E naught exponent of r square divided by w naught the whole square. And here r is the radius. Okay, so you can see that E, which is uh, the energy or the amplitude here, is dependent on r, where r is the uh, radius of the core here. Okay. So the MFD is going to depend on these factors, and based on this we can predict various losses or various problems that happen in the optical fiber, but we'll be concerned more with dispersion in module 2. Like I said, we are not going to do much detail of the mode field diameter because it is used, it is related more to the multimode fiber, and we don't want to do much of detail of MMFs because they are used only for shorter distances. Okay. So this was about another parameter of the single mode fiber. And then there are numericals in Gerd Geiser based on mode field diameter, but they are complicated and we really have not even derived this mathematical expression. So there's no need to do those numericals. This much detail is more than sufficient for doing the mode field diameter. Okay. So uh, so this brings to an end the various parameters that we need to do for single mode fiber. And of course, there are more numericals based on that, and I'll be solving that. The last part of this module deals with fiber materials. So here it talks about the different types of fibers which we can have. And by types, I don't mean single or multimode fiber or step index, graded index. I mean, what are the types of fibers, like a glass fiber, through which material it is made, like it could be a plastic fiber. So those are the kind of fibers that we need to discuss. There's always been a question on this fiber material in the exam from an exam point of view. So let us quickly look at what these fiber materials are, what are the types. Just to let you know, this is completely theory in nature. So you'll have to know what material is used, what is the fiber. So I'll give you a glimpse of it, and the notes are already shared, so you can look at the details. Uh, there's a lot of details given in the book as well, right? But I will be giving you the important points here, right? So there are some requirements which have to be satisfied when you select the material to make an optical fiber, right? The very first requirement is that it should be possible to make them long because you want longer fibers. The material should be such that the fiber could be made as a flexible fiber, right? It should not be like a, a fiber which you cannot bend or flex, right? So material should be like that. Uh, the material should be operated at a certain wavelength where the fiber gives some minimum attenuation, minimum dispersion. This we'll be talking about in detail in module 2, where we see that the wavelength of 1550 nanometer really gives us a mix of both. So we'll look at those details. This material which you use to make the fiber, it should be also compatible with how you want to design the refractive index of the core and cladding. Right? So based on this, basically the materials which really satisfy these conditions, it is basically the glass and plastic. Majority of the fibers are made from silica, that is SiO2 or silicate. Uh, Plastic fibers are not that much used. They are used less because these kind of fibers give high attenuation. So I keep giving you the example of the fiber which you used in the lab the previous semester. That's a plastic fiber. Of course, you could use that in the lab because the distance of transmission was absolutely very small, right? Uh, but there is a advantage to these kind of fibers. These fibers have high strength. So there are different of these different details of these different fibers which we can talk about, and like I said, much of it is theory, so I'll only give you what are the most important points here, and rest of it is there in the notes and also in the book, right? So when we talk about the glass fiber, I'm only giving you the important points here because I want to solve more numericals, because that is where the trouble lies for the students, right? So, so this kind of a fiber is made usually by you can fuse the mixture of some metal with some sulfides, and this resulting material you can connect them, network them, and then you get a fiber-like material. And but there's a problem with their melting points, and that you can take care by adding certain different kinds of liquids. So all those chemical properties and how you can have this cladding and core designed using different kinds of materials is given in the notes, so you can refer to that. The one type of this glass fiber is known as the active glass fiber, and this is based on using rare earth materials. Rare earth materials, right? And these will give you the properties which we require to, have whatever desired core and cladding values that we require here. Okay, so those details are also there in the notes. Regarding the plastic fibers, you can use polymer, and that kind of a fiber is known as the polymer optical fiber or plastic optical fiber, used usually for shorter distances like lab. These would be tough and durable. I mean, they won't break easily. Compared with the silica fibers, they will also have larger core diameter. So you could use the LEDs as the source, so it also leads to less cost of the system, right? The other kind of fiber that we generally have, and this is more like used in the industry. These are known as photonic crystal fibers, uh, PCFs. Okay. So from an exam point of view, also they keep asking a short note on photonic crystal fibers, right? These fibers are also named as the holy fiber, or what are known as the microstructured fiber. So they look like this. Let me quickly draw them. So there is one kind of fiber, it is known as the index guiding fiber, and on the other hand you have the photonic band gap fiber. So these are the types of PCFs that you could have, right? I'm sure you know what is this term photonic. It is exactly following what is electronics. Electronics deals with the flow of electrons. That's why it's called electronics. Photonics deals with light. That is nothing but photons. That's why it is called photonics. Right. So anything that deals with optics will be generally called as photonics. So here you have uh, many such index cores, or sorry, the cladding with embedded holes. So let me quickly draw them and you can understand. So these holes here, these are embedded holes in cladding, and this is the gap here is basically the solid high index core, and you could also have a buffer surrounding this optical fiber. So I have not drawn it, but just here around the entire fiber you could also have a buffer. So that buffer or the coating is going to help the fiber in not being damaged as much, right? So if I compare this with the photonic band gap fiber, so the only difference here is you have a core, and this core is an air core. Rest of the things are the same, so you'll have all these holes surrounding this air core, right? In that index guiding fiber we had a solid high index core, but here we are having an air core, so n1 is going to be 1, right? So that is the difference here. You are also going to have the buffer and so on and so forth, right? So in the index guiding fiber, as you can see, the fiber is going to have a solid core, and the cladding is going to have the embedded holes. This core and cladding will be made up of the same material, but the holes in the cladding have lower refractive index. So you could choose, silica, or you could use air. And this holes in the microstructure, because you're using these holes, these are known as microstructure. This has a diameter of d, right? So this means that every hole here has a diameter of d. So the advantage of these kind of fibers, the index guiding fibers, is that they are seen to have low loss. Let me just quickly write here. They have low loss, transmit high power, and they reduce darkening effect. This darkening effect we'll be doing in module 3. Okay. Now, when it comes to photonic band gap fibers, you can see that it consists of the air holes, and then there is also going to be an air core there, and the operating principle is going to be same as what is used in a lattice or a semiconductor, and this hollow core that we have is going to act as a defect, so that the light can propagate much better. So photonic bandgap fibers give you better output compared to the index guiding fibers, right? Then the module also talks about some optical cables, that the cables can be put indoors and outdoors. The main advantage that you have with the fibers is that OFC can also be underwater. So underwater communication has become a very important kind of communication, right? So for this underwater communication, mostly the fibers are used because the Wi-Fi is not going to work. You can also use these OFC for indoor communication, and you can also use them for outdoor communication. Uh, just to give you an additional information, the optical fibers, the OFCs, are mainly backbone. These are the backbone networks. Right? So very quickly, what this backbone network would mean, this would mean this. So let's say you have an office here, right? So for this office to get connection, so let this be an antenna and it gives all the signal. This is your Wi-Fi, right? But the Wi-Fi is not going to be able to give us that much bandwidth. Therefore, we are going to connect this Wi-Fi to backbone network, and this network, backbone network, is going to be connected to the optical fiber, right? So the optical fiber is going to provide very high bandwidth. Now this backbone network is going to get at as the input this very high bandwidth, and now it is going to uh, distribute this very high bandwidth to various applications. So one application is an office, the other application could be a residence, the other application could be another office, then different residences, educational institutions, so on and so forth, right? So this very high bandwidth gets split into different types of bandwidth, right? So backbone network will always have the OFC, because OFC will provide very high bandwidth. The front end, that is the network which goes to the office, residence, and educational institutions, so on and so forth, they are known as the access networks. Why are they the access networks? Because the customers are going to access the bandwidth through those networks, right? So the one in our college is also like an access network where you get Wi-Fi in the campus, but the backbone is always going to be the optical fiber. Right? So this is the real use of the optical fiber. Using optical fiber as an access network is only advantageous if you require very high bandwidth. So for example, as an individual, if I start using 20 Gbps or 50 Gbps, it may not be required for me, because I'm just, let's say, just using normal internet usage every day. Probably that much is required for someone who's playing games online or watching a lot of movies, but in general for daily usage you don't require that kind of bandwidth. So to get a direct OFC bandwidth may not be a good idea. So it is always advisable to get an access network for which backbone network is the optical fiber. Okay. So uh, this finishes the theory part that we had to do. There are some numericals which are left, which we should be solving. So let us pick out some numericals which were remaining. I'd already solved about 4 to 5 numericals previously. Let us look at some other ones which are remaining. So theory wise, module 1 is over. Let's see how many numericals we can do today. Some may remain for tomorrow, and then I will also give you a glimpse of module 2, which is a very important module. Okay, that is in tomorrow's lecture. Okay. So let's pick out this one numerical which was remaining. So this is numerical 1. The question is the velocity of light in core of a step index fiber is 2.01 into 10 raised to 8 meters per second, and critical angle at the core cladding interface is 80 degrees. The question is determine the numerical aperture and acceptance angle for the fiber in air, and the assumption that we need to make. So let me write that here. The assumption is core diameter is suitable by the ray analysis, and velocity of light in vacuum is 2.998 into 10 raised to 8 meter per second, right? So let us see how we can solve this, right? So let me read the question. The question says velocity of light in core of a step index fiber is 2.01 into 10 raised to 8, and critical angle at the core cladding interface is 80 degrees. We need to determine the numerical aperture and acceptance angle, and under the assumption that the core diameter is suitable for this ray analysis, which we have been doing, the Snell's law, and you are given the velocity of light in vacuum also, which is 2.998 into 10 raised to 8, right? So what we need to find is Na, right? We need to find the numerical aperture, and we also need to find theta A, that is the acceptance angle. Again, I should specify, in some books this is also theta naught, okay, but I'm going to be using theta A. So these are the two parameters that we need to find, right? Now, before anything else, if we read the question, it says velocity of light in core of the step index fiber is 2.01 into 10 raised to 8 meter per second. Now, N1 is the refractive index in the core, and N2 is the refractive index in the cladding, and we know that N2 is less than N1. All our derivations are based on that, right? Now, velocity of light in core is 2.01 into 10 raised to 8. That means V1, because I'm naming core as refractive index as N1, I'm calling the velocity in core as V1, and that is 2.01 into 10 raised to 8 meters per second, right? Now, from this, we can calculate N1, because I know that in general, refractive index N is C by V, where C is the speed of light in vacuum and V is the speed of light in the material, right? So with this equation, I can find N1, which will be C by V1. C is given to us as 2.998 into 10 raised to 8, or it could be 3 into 10 raised to 8, divided by V1 is given to us 2.01 into 10 raised to 8, right? I'm not putting the units because meters per second for both will just cancel, right? So from this you can find N1. So this 10 raised to 8 and 10 raised to 8 cancels, and let's see, this comes out to be about 1.491. So from that information, I can find the refractive index of the core, which is N1, right? The other information which is given to us is that the critical angle at the core cladding interface is 80 degree. That means phi C is given to us as 80 degree. And I know that phi C is sine inverse N2 by N1, or if I take the sine inverse on the other end, sine phi c is n2 by n1. I already know the value of n1. Therefore, n2, which is the refractive index of the cladding, will be n1 sine phi 1, which will be n1, which is 1.491, multiplied with sine, I'm sorry, this should be phi c. So you have 1.491 sine phi c, and phi c is 80 degrees. Okay. So if you have a calculator set at degrees, then n2 can be calculated as, let me calculate this. This comes out to be 1.468, right? And from this I know that my answer is right because n2 is less than n1, right? But they are very close to each other. So from the information given, we have found the values of n1 and n2, right? Now we need to find na, and I know that na is root of n1 square minus n2 square, and I know that n1 is 1.491. So 1.491 square minus 1.468 square, which is n2, and doing this, you get about 0.2608, right? That is Na, and I also need to find theta A, which is the acceptance angle, and I know that sine theta A is root of n1 square minus n2 square, which is nothing but Na, which implies theta A is sine inverse Na. So theta A will be sine inverse of 0.2608, and this will be about 75.12 degrees, right? So with all this information, this is what we can calculate. Okay. So I hope this was clear. It's a simple problem. Only thing, we need to know the equations and we need to know what data is given to us. Now let's look at another problem. Let me read the question. Okay. So the question is a step index fiber with a large core diameter compared with wavelength of transmitted light has an acceptance angle in air of 22 degrees and relative refractive index difference of 3%. The question is, find numerical aperture and critical angle. So we are given a step index fiber which has an acceptance angle in air of about 22 degrees and refractive index difference as 3%. We need to calculate Na and the critical angle. So let's first quickly write what's given to us. We are given the acceptance angle, that is theta A, as 22 degrees. We are given the relative refractive index difference, that is delta, as 3%, which is 0.03. We need to calculate Na and we need to calculate critical angle phi c. Right? So it's a very simple problem. I know that sine theta A is Na, which is also root of n1 square minus n2 square. Therefore, Na will just be sine theta A, and theta A is 22 degrees. So with this, the Na that I get is 0.374. 0.374. The other parameter we need to find is phi c, and we know that phi c is sine inverse n2 by n1. However, we do not know what is n1. We also do not know what is n2. So let's first see how we can calculate that, right? To calculate n1, I'll be using the value of Na, which we have just calculated, and the delta value which is given to us. So we know that Na can be related to delta as n1 root 2 delta. So from here, n1 is Na divided by root of 2 delta. So therefore n1 will be Na, which is 0.3774 divided by root of 2 delta, that is 2 into 0.03, because delta is 3%. Right? So based on this, n1 which we get is 1.532. Right? But to calculate phi c, we also need n2, and I know that Na is root of n1 square minus n2 square. So if I square both sides, Na square is n1 square minus n2 square, and from here I can calculate n2. So n2 square will be n1 square minus Na square. Therefore, n2 will be root of n1 square minus Na square. So therefore n2 will now be square root of n1 is 1.532, so square of that, minus Na, which is 0.374, so you'll have 0.374 whole square, right? And if I calculate this, okay, so the answer that we get here is 1.485, and we know that it is right because n2 is less than n1, right? So finally, with this, phi c can be calculated as sine inverse n2 by n1, which is 1.485 n2, and n1, which is 1.532. And when you do that, setting the calculator in degree mode, we get about 75.78 degrees. Right? So this is the other numerical which we wanted to solve.